Girl, today we are talking about why carbs are not the enemy. So, right now we're going through this influx of diet trends that are either completely eliminating carbohydrates or they are severely limiting them. And I just think that is a horrible idea. And I want to teach you why carbs are not the enemy, okay? We should never completely restrict an entire group of macronutrients, food sources, unless there's a medical reason why. Now, in terms of like keto, I think keto can work well if you do it correctly. And the thing I see the most is people doing keto incorrectly and therefore not helping themselves out. But all that aside, here is why carbs are important and why they are not the enemy. So first, they are our main source of energy. They should comprise up the majority of your diets between carbs, fat, and protein. And the second thing that is the most important, I think, personally, and what really freaks me out when I see people doing keto incorrectly, is that your brain can only function exclusively off of carbohydrates, okay? It cannot function off of proteins and it cannot function off of fat. It runs exclusively on carbs. If you are not eating enough carbs, your brain and your brain's capacity to function will suffer. And that's scary. I mean, brain fog is a real thing, and that's a sign that maybe you need to eat more carbs. But, I mean, if you are severely limiting your carbohydrates, your brain can stop working and you become brain dead. And that's scary. That is a scary thing. So I'm not here to scare you. I'm just here to tell you why carbs are important. They're our main source of energy. They're our quickest source of energy, and it's our brain's only source of energy. So if you want to be able to think clearly, eat your carbs, okay? But overall, like I said, carbs should be a majority of your caloric intake. Now, they give you a range. They say 45 to 65% should be made up of carbohydrates of your caloric intake. And one carb is 4 calories. So if you do the math, 45% of a 2,000 calorie diet is about 225 grams, and 65 is about 325 grams. So that's a big range, and that is a lot of carbohydrates. So maybe you don't need all those carbs. What you need carb-wise is going to depend on your activity level, your body shape, and what I mean by that is like, are you more muscular? Do you have more body fat, etc.? Your sex, your activity level. I don't know if I already said that, but there's a whole variety of factors involved. So that's going to determine it. Now, the minimum that is recommended by like the USDA and dietitians and everything is 130 grams of carbs a day if you're 19 years or older. So if you're starting to dip below that 130 grams of carbs, I highly suggest you consult with a registered dietitian if you're doing this for medical purposes, and make sure you're doing it safely. Now, I should throw that in here that I am not a doctor and I'm not a registered dietitian, and so this is all just intended to be advice, but this is not intended to cure or prevent any type of diseases, okay? But going back to the main subject here, why carbs are important. So they're our main source of energy. We can eat carbs and we can immediately get that energy. Those are going to be like your simple sugars, like your fruits, anything like candy that has like artificial sugars, candy and fruit, you're going to get the same kind of effect there because we have simple sugars that our body can break down immediately and get some energy. I can also replenish our glycogen stores. So we store most of our carbohydrates in muscle glycogen, which is the muscle's fuel source. So if you are low on carbs, it's going to be harder to work out because your muscles themselves are tired as well. And then we can also store glycogen as fat. Now, this is to caution you that doesn't mean that carbs are going to make you fat. They're going to be stored as fat, and fat is also a fuel source. So if you hear low intensity, say exercise is like a fat burning zone and everything, you're going to have to burn through all your carbohydrate stores first before you start tapping into your fat stores. So that's just what that means. Doesn't mean you're going to be fat or you're going to gain weight or whatever. Now, we have like two main types of carbs. You have your simple, like I mentioned, your fruits, your candy. Those are sugars that break down faster. And then you have your complex carbs, which are going to be like your starches that provide fiber, they provide vitamins, they provide minerals. They're going to be more nutrient dense because they're going to provide more bang of nutrients for your buck, so to speak. And that also goes on to say that a carb is a carb, but you want to choose your carbs wisely, because you can have a bagel that says has like 30 grams of carbs in it. It's not going to be as nutrient dense as if you chose like quinoa and carrots that also has 30 grams of carbs, which you're going to get way more nutritional value out of those quinoa. So that's just like what I wanted to place in there as well. Let's see. Oh, another thing is carbs are really the only way you're going to get any fiber. And fiber is so important for your digestive system. Okay, if you're not going poop regularly, at least once or twice a day, you're probably going to need some more fiber. And you're really only going to get those from your carb sources. So if you're not eating enough carbs and your digestion's off, you're probably just not getting enough fiber. So as a woman, you're going to want to eat about 28 grams, give or take your caloric needs. And then as a male, you would want to eat about 35 grams, again, give or take your caloric needs. And your caloric needs can be figured out by reaching out to a professional, someone with a nutritional background, or a registered dietitian, either or. You know, I have, certification and background and education in that, so I could calculate your nutritional needs. Since I'm not a registered dietitian, I can't say eat 10 cups of XYZ and, et cetera, et cetera. I digress, and I should get back to my point here. Let's see, I'm just checking my notes here. So if we eat carbs, we can spare muscle breakdown. So I mentioned earlier that glycogen is your muscle's energy. If you eat carbs, then you can use your carb fuel sources. If you burn through all your carbs, then you're going to go to fat. And if you burn through that, you're going to go into protein. And our body can actually break our muscles down and use that protein as energy. Now, that's not what we want to do. We never want to break down our muscles for energy source. That is essentially from when we were like cave people, was in starvation days, like instead of just dying, we still had to protect ourselves from like dinosaurs. We would use our muscles as fuel to like protect ourselves and be able to go hunt and gather and etc. Carbohydrates, I said there's two types, there's sugars, there's starches. We're going to find our carbs in our blood, that's blood sugar. There's going to be a little bit in there, there's going to be a little bit in our liver, but mainly we store it in our muscle glycogen. So if you want to be able to work out, gain muscle, use muscle, fuel it, make them a little bit more defined, you're going to want to eat some carbs. And you're going to be able to find carbs in all kinds of sources, so fruits, candies, breads, pastas, almost everything has carbs. Now, your meats, like your animal protein, will probably not have any carbs in it unless it's like has like seasonings and stuff on it. But that's the biggest thing. And the one myth I do want to say is that eating carbs does not make you gain weight. Gaining weight is going to be from eating in a caloric surplus, so eating more calories than your body needs to survive day after day after day. If you eat in a caloric surplus because you ate, a bowl of ice cream or a bagel, that's not going to make you gain weight. It's going to be like, okay, it's going to be a little bit of extra carbs, but maybe in the next day you balance out. But if you were to eat in a caloric surplus because of too much meat or too many carrots or whatever, you will gain weight if you consistently eat in a caloric surplus. But it does not mean that carbs will make you gain weight, okay? That is like the number one thing I always hear that I want to just nick in the butt right now. Carbs does not mean weight gain. So I hope this kind of cleared up some food fears around carbs and everything, but I really appreciate if you have any more questions, please drop them below. But thanks guys so much for watching. Bye.